Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Wheel of Time. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're immediately picking up where last week's episode left off with the Waygate closing. Matt still on the outside. I was wondering, is he going to squeeze in at the last second or something? Like, no, he just didn't come along. Now, whether it's just the darkness inside of him swelling that he just didn't want to go because he kind of figured Moraine out, right, you're sending us to our death. But it's right, you kind of, it is a thing of Rand is the one that's kind of adverse to leaving him behind, but it's also Moraine's he made his choice, so we can't do anything. And even Egwene's we didn't leave him, he left us by staying behind, he's choosing to not be a part of this. But even then, you have Lan being well, what if he's the dragon? And it's Moraine kind of the darkness in him, she doesn't think it is him. It's if anything, he's probably going to go back and try and get that dagger. Once again, he's feeding off of it just as much as it's feeding off of him. But Lan brings up again, but what if he is the dragon? It's then it's actually a good thing we're not taking him to the eye, because the last thing we want is him to be near the Dark One, because we know he'll what choice he'll make. He'll easily be swayed, and because amongst anyone in that group, everyone in that group has a little bit of darkness, but Matt has it the worst. But maybe the argument is he kind of wears his darkness on his sleeve. His upbringing, his circumstances are what bred him to be that darkness in him. So because they can't even open the way back up either, because there's a creature there, was it the Ma-Chin Shin, that is which translates to the Black Wind. You can't channel in there, or this thing will devour your soul. So it's yep. But it turns out the pathway, it's you have to be careful with your steps, because you could basically fall to your death, in a bottomless pit that no one knows what the actual end of it is. Because the place they're in, it's this place actually used to be something beautiful. I don't think Loial ever really talked about what actually made the ways look the way it does now. He's basically saying it was a luscious place at some point. All this stone ground we were that used to be luscious grass and stuff. So it's I don't know if he ever really specified what happened to the place. Maybe the Black Wind had something to do with that, but maybe he did and I just missed it. But it's that bottomless pit isn't even the worst way to die here. And Egwene's that's not the worst way. He's oh no, there's worse ways. And Rand was no, it's okay. You don't have to go into that, Loial. But it turns out someone's kind of impeding their progress, because the way guide, it's a tablet, kind of pointing you where you need to go to get those specific way gates. And the one they need to get to the eye is that obviously it's just scratched up all the hell. And it's if someone did that, it's someone's following us and trying to impede our progress. Well, unfortunately, they end up running into a Trolloc, and it's a Trollocs here, because now we got an answer to something that's been bugging everyone for a while, of in the confines of the show, is how were the Trollocs able to make it to Two Rivers without anyone noticing, or even Moraine knowing they were coming? It's because they were using the waves, which I'm they're not supposed to be able to do that. So something changed and something shifted so that they could do that. Not unless they have someone with powers, or I would assume it'd have to be, the only way to get into that you have to be someone that can channel. So it means someone who can channel is helping them out. Now, whether that's an Aes Sedai, we've at least met one person who, what's her name? I'm already, I think it was Dana, right? It was the actress who played Ren in The Outpost. She sided with the Dark One. So it's who's to say there's not someone that can channel, whether it's, someone that's going mad from being able to channel a guy, or whether it's an Aes Sedai that chose the dark side. Who knows? But it definitely implies it's someone that's channeling that help the Trollocs out, whoever that may be. So it's going to be interesting to find out what that's all about. But before we continue that, though, it is this interesting thing, because they're supposed to be taking a break and stuff. I even love that line of Loial is oh, be patient with me, and Rand makes a wisecrack right, if we're gonna have to be patient for him, we're all gonna die, because he's very slow in what he does. But he's also about slow and steady wins the race. Don't go rushing towards things, because he's humans in particular have a tendency to rush towards things. But I guess it's compared to because I think they talked about Loial is his species are age slower than humans anyway, so it's like we have a different life expectancy, so humans are always rushing towards their, quick to rush towards their death, essentially, you know, so... no, not necessarily death, but just like quick at everything in life, just because you're always in such a hurry. But as that relaxing moment goes down, like everyone's resting, you have Rand and at least Rand and Egwene have someone, and then you have like Nynaeve and Perrin kind of having no one. But I guess like when you look at that moment, you're like, that seems like that might be indicative of something else. But we'll get to that in a second. But it's kind of like, yeah, like both of them had no one. At least Rand and Egwene had each other, which is kind of like, right. It just kind of makes you feel that much more alone in that moment. But in that moment, like, Egwene accidentally channeled in order to protect herself from the Trolloc, and that attracted the Black Wind, which it gets inside of your head and basically plays on insecurities. Like Moiraine, it's like, oh, you're rushing these kids towards their death and going to call it heroism. Nynaeve, it got to her saying, like, right, you can't protect them. You're going to watch all the people you love die in front of you just like you did with your parents. Lan, it was saying, like, right, you can't protect her. She's going to die. With Rand, it's like she doesn't love you as much as you love her. She already left once and she's going to do it again. I forgot what it said about Egwene. I think it was just that maybe she wasn't enough. I know with Perrin it talked about the fact is that he, it's like, oh, you never really loved your wife, Lila. That's why you killed her, because you're secretly in love with someone else. And in that moment I was like, oh, Egwene, interesting. You did kind of, like, in retrospect, it's like, yeah, well, it's kind of catching those vibes a little bit, because I was wondering if, like, something was going to happen when they were, like, off on their own, but nothing ever did, but it's like, oh, because he's been burying it deeper, because his shame about killing Lila, like, I think it kind of coincides with him having feelings for Egwene, and just how complicated that is. But Nynaeve wasn't going to back down, and she channels, creating, like, a large, like, orb that protects them from the Black Wind, and it gave Moiraine the time needed to, like, bust away through it. It's like, man, Nynaeve, like, just, like, flexing on them, time and time again. But luckily they made it through, and they made it to essentially the Borderlands, which turns out this is actually where Lan is from. Well, at least he spent a lot of time here. This is the only home he has left. And so they go to talk to, like, the lord of the place, which I love the moment, like, and I think that speaks volumes, that the moment, like, Moiraine was like, I'm here for a warning, he's like, blah, 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 if you're going to tell us about blah, 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 don't worry, I can protect my kingdom. And she's like, I would never, like, tell you any other way. And, like, he kept cutting her off. I was like, you disrespectful douchebag. But she's like, no, I'm here to warn you that the Trollocs can now use the way, so you might want to be careful. You might want to put people there. And he was kind of paused for a second. He's like, all right, do what she says. It's like, yeah. Because apparently his sister, like, sent word to the White Tower, but he was like, my sister worries too much. We've always been able to protect this land. I've always been able to protect this land. I got this. So, but he's like, oh, like, I offended you. I hope we're... She's like, no, we're all good. But it's like, yeah. The problem is he assumes to know all when he, in actuality, doesn't. The hubris of him as a leader, interestingly enough. But, like I said, this is the place that everyone's going to rest for a while. Moiraine wants to go see the seer, which I guess it's not public knowledge. It seems, I wonder is the lord who runs the place, what was his name again? Like, it was something with an A. They only said it like once or twice. But the lord who runs his place, his sister, it seems like she's the only one that's in the know about a lot of stuff, because she wasn't strong enough to be an Aes Sedai, but it's like, maybe you can be maybe I can count on your discretion in this. And obviously for her, it's like, right, like, discretion can only go so far, because at the end of the day, I will always put, like, protecting this land, protecting this place will always come first. My loyalty is to that, because Moiraine was probably going to confide in her about the Mat thing, which we'll get to in a second, but also she's probably going to be like, right, this is what we're actually here for. But, yeah, she's like, yeah, I want you to get word to the tower about, a man. Well, I guess she's like, actually a boy. As who should I get the word to? I was like, are you going to give it to the Amarancy? It's like, nah, you're going to give it to the Red Sedais. And I'm sure Liandrin is going to be all over this. But it's like, yeah, going after Mat, which are like, oh, you're keeping that hush-hush from the rest of the team, because they're not going to be too happy about that. But if he is potentially the dragon, and even if he isn't, him being able to channel the darkness in him, it cannot be left unchecked. If I can't keep an eye on, if Rand's not there to keep an eye on, we need to remove him from the board. Now, he's already a mess already, Matt is. Like, you add in losing, channeling, what that'll do to him, like, what that does to anyone anyway, it breaks them. We already saw what what Logain was like. Still a lot of himself, even without the magic, but he was still begging for death. So I could almost see Matt being a similar thing. They might even do the same thing of like, right, they probably won't even just kill Matt. They'll probably just like lock him up. In particular, it's like, oh, why just have one when we can have two test subjects? If it goes that way, because even Moraine brought up the fact is that Matt's stronger than he has any right to be. So he might give the Aes Sedai a run for their money. I mean, Logain already did, so Matt might end up turning out to be the next Logain and just be an issue all on his own. A false dragon rising. With the way the episode plays out, I could definitely see that. Just because it would put him at odds with, going ahead and talking about, like, Rand. Like, I think it would put him at odds with Rand, and, like, they're such best friends and good friends that I think, especially because Rand always sticks up for Matt. So that's why I'm thinking that'll probably play into the story of him. Well, if things even work out for Rand, so. What I thought was really interesting is that Perrin, while he's walking, he ends up noticing like the peddler from the first episode, which Nynaeve is like, no, it couldn't be that dude. He's dead. He died when the Trollocs attacked. And Perrin's like, right. But it's like, we saw him from behind. It's like, I think that was him. We saw him coming out of the ways too. So that shifty bastard made sure to leave before the Trollocs arrived. Because the last time you see him in the episode, if you go back, because I haven't rewatched it, but I just remember, I was like, kind of remember at the time, I was like, that's kind of weird that you just happened to snuff. He wasn't scared and panicky. He just like backed away, like, I don't know, like he was in control. And the fact is, he found his way through ways, which once again, the only way through that would be channeling. So I guess I answered my question. So he might be the one that's working with the Troll. Like he might be. Not unless he's actually the Dark One in disguise or something like that. It's like, oh, you think you're looking for me, but I've been following you guys the entire time, trailing behind you. Maybe, maybe not. The fact is that he reached out to Matt and put Matt in that situation. Like, it's almost like he was probably testing the waters a little bit with Matt. When just like, oh, you want to buy something for your sisters? All right, cool. And kind of like, it's just, I think he was acting like a dick. Like, oh, this will only get you so much, because he was spurring that on a little bit of just like, right, beating and kicking Matt while he was down, essentially. So it's spurring something. I think maybe getting a closer look and closer taste to that darkness in him. So whether he ends up being like the Dark One in a human form, or whether like the Dark One, like not unless that's his form to like take when he's out and about, or whether it's just that peddler is a channeler, that he's kind of he's a false dragon like Logain in his own right, which once again there still could be a comparison of like, right, Logain isn't the only one, I'm one, and then Matt ends up being one, making it almost like this former trifecta of people out there like that. We'll have to wait and see, but I think that might be what they're setting up. Like I said, either that's the real him and he's a bad guy, or it's just like, right, this person never existed and it was a disguise the entire time, or the guy did exist and I just took his skin and started wearing it. We'll have to wait and see, but other than that, there is the conversation. Well, let's circle back to the seer situation, which she sees different things. For Perrin, she sees his yellow eyes and blood around his mouth, so I'm assuming, like, right, whatever his circumstances is, once again, I'm leaning werewolf, lichen, whatever they're going to end up going by in this, that he's going to end up giving in more to his animalistic, wilder side. She sees Rand with a baby. It's like, whose baby? It's like, I can't tell. But then, like, she sees auras around both Egwene and Nynaeve, and it's like, it's still up in the air who it actually is, because their destinies are so intertwined, it's like hard to separate and tell, like, oh, whose destiny standing out a little bit more, because whoever that is will give Moraine some insight to who the dragon is. But it's like, no, they're so intertwined and interconnected. I think the point is, like, one of them is the Dragon Reborn, but it's so heavily tied and influential to the rest of everyone else's stories that their destinies are so, like, intertwined that's why. I'm curious what would be seen if Matt was there. But she also looks at Moraine and it's like, right, the Emerald seat will be your downfall. And you're like, oh, is that because, I guess, Leandrin, I guess maybe that's supposed to be indicative of, like, Leandrin's going to get her way and she's going to become, like, the new Emerald seat. So it's not going to be Siwon, that's on the throne anymore, that maybe it's going to be Landrin, or maybe it's just like Siwon has no choice but to kind of throw you under the bus even further. I don't know, but it does kind of, that's a very interesting warning in the grand scheme of things. So what that ends up unfolding to be, we'll have to wait and see. But obviously, Moraine does end up telling them the truth. It's like, right, I can't lie to you. You need to remember that, Nynaeve. So it's like, right, one of you will be the dragon, the others will die. You know, so it's like, right, now it becomes a conversation about, well, what if it's Matt that's the dragon? But it's like, no, like, but it's, you know, and it's like, well, you went to the seer, so which one of us is the dragon? It's like, it's impossible to tell. Like, the only way to know is with all of you coming with me to the eye. But it's like, at the end of the day, Nynaeve, it's like, right, she's like, you're claiming to give us a choice, but you'll force us if you have to, right? So, you know, we should have at least some semblance, like, you know, give us our choice. And she's like, right, you have till tonight to decide then, because we need to move quickly while the Dark One's weakened. So now it becomes a conversation of, what are we going to do? Egwene is the one that's pushing more like, we should go. And it's like, right, it's not even for Moraine's sake. I'm doing this because we left the village in the first place to protect the people we love. This is our opportunity. No matter what the cost is, we get to protect so many people's lives, you know? But then, like, Nynaeve continues to be against it. But even Egwene is like, right, like, if you're the wisdom here, if it wasn't Moraine saying all of this, then you wouldn't. It's like, one, she has an issue with Aes Sedai's. She has a particular issue with Moraine because it's like, right, you dragged me and my friends, particularly you dragged the people I care about into all of this. There's that. 3 is because of her, like, even more so because of the whole her and Lan situation. I think that kind of boils a little bit more, adds more fuel to the fire, essentially. But then, like, it was, what started all of this is the fact is that, like, everyone's still reeling from the Black Wind in some shape or form, so that was kind of influencing a lot of what they were saying in that moment, because Nynaeve wants them away from all this, because she's thinking, like, right, they are going to die and I won't be able to do anything to protect them. Like I said, I think Egwene was just kind of, like, always scared that she'll never be, and like I said, I don't remember specifically what it said about, the Black Wind said about Egwene, but I think that kind of plays a role in, like, right, she's trying to step up even more, but, you know, she kind of ends up, like, basically shitting on Matt, being like, oh, you know who Matt is, but he's like, don't talk about Matt like that, you don't know him that well, the fact that, it's like, he left us, Rand, we didn't leave him, and he's like, oh, you would know about leaving, and she's like, excuse me, and then Perrin gets up, and he's like, apologize, and then Nynaeve had to be like, I'm tired of you fighting her over her like she's something to win, and Rand's like, wait, what? And she's like, no, I didn't mean to. And it's like, oh boy. Oh, drama. Drama. Trouble in the Winter Circle. The fact is that, because I guess Nynaeve's known for a while, probably like even back then while they were in the Ways path, that she probably saw the way he reacted, like once again seeing, it's like, oh, he doesn't have Lila, but also on top of that, he feels the way he has about Egwene, and them being together alone probably made those feelings kind of resurface to some extent. So, but he's telling Rand to apologize, and Rand's like, right, I didn't even see what was in front of my eyes the entire time. It's like, you married Layla the night me and Egwene got together, and he's like, what are you saying? He's like, I loved my wife, and just Rand walks away. Obviously, Nynaeve tries to apologize to Egwene, but she just walks away, and it's like, yep, that all fell apart. And once again, it's because Nynaeve just wanted this arguing to stop, but also it's just like, right, she's doing everything she can to help her friends, and in that moment, she just kind of made matters worse, so. I didn't touch on it at the beginning of the episode, but we did see, like, an IL pregnant, ripping through people. It's like soldiers were following her and she was killing every single one of them. Now, we never really got into the nitty gritty about like what that was about. But the moment we saw her, I was like, that's going to be Rand's mom, isn't it? Because once again, Loial referred to him as a IL. It's like, but he was like, no, I'm not one. And the moment the guy rode up with the sword, I didn't even pay attention. I noticed the curve of the blade. I was like, that seems like the sword that Rand has. I just wasn't paying attention to the symbol above the, hilt. That I was like, yeah, that's got to be his dad in armor or something like that. Now, whether that's his actual dad, or whether that's just like, oh, 'cause I think he just I don't know. I don't know if that's his actual biological dad or whether that was just like, oh, the man that took him and raised him. Like, God, I don't know if we know who his dad is. There was still a lot about Rand's history that wasn't, like, clarified in that moment. But like I said, his mom was sick as hell, like, literally pregnant, stabbing people with spears, sliding all over the place, like some Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon type of stuff. It kind of reminded me of like Into the Badlands a little bit. If you've never seen Into the Badlands, it has a very neat martial arts style that's similar to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but it's like super bloody, and there is a there's some like heaviness to it as well. But it has like that almost gliding lightness that is like how light and floaty Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is. Into the Badlands has that, and like this kind of had that same vibe as well. So I thought that was pretty dope. That last bastard stabbed her in the stomach. Luckily, she got him back, but at the end of it, though, she ended up dying, giving birth to Rand. I mean, she was already probably bleeding out, so like that was just the last of it. She held on long enough to give birth to him, and because Rand already had some idea about his circumstances, because when he was rescuing his dad from in episode 1 after the Trolloc poison situation and taking him to try and find Nynaeve, it led to him and his dad had a conversation we as the audience weren't privy to, where he was kind of like, I guess, hallucinating. He was talking about, oh, Karen, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to lead them up to her and stuff like that. So we'll kind of leave Rand's birth there until we like circle back to like his side of things, like fully into, you know, him being the dragon and everything. But let's circle to like the Nynaeve and Lan situation. Her following Lan, because Moraine doesn't want like Lan to worry about her as much, because she blames herself, because it's like she's been feeling this way for a while of like, right, I took everything from you. He was like, but you didn't. Like for him, it's like more so you gave me everything. Like before you, I had nothing to live for. You gave me a purpose, gave me something to live for. You. But she's for a long time been wanting to like cut their ties so that he could actually have a life, because she'd even said like, oh, the wisdom, I like her too. So it's like, right, like she knows there's something between her and Lan, and it's like, it's okay, like, you know, because it's like, there's nothing necessarily going on between Lan and Moraine, which I thought there was going to be, but it's like, once again, a warder and their Aes Sedai, once again, Aes Sedai and their warder, never had that necessarily like that relationship like that. It can be, but it doesn't always have to be. I mean, especially because we know she's with Siwon, so, But Lan goes back to spend time with his family, and Nynaeve followed him, and he kind of figured as much, which I love that she was like spying on him, and then like she turns and he's back. It's like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, he was like, following me? He's like, I mean, I don't think we could even consider this tracking. He's like, well, come on, you're just going to stand here the entire time, or are you going to come inside? I was like, right, this is Nynaeve, and the dude that's kind of essentially like his dad is like, she's beautiful, and he's like, yeah, I had noticed. But yeah, they thought she was an Aes Sedai, but she was like, no, I'm not one. But it's like, right, thank you for bringing Lan back to us, making sure that he found his way back to us, which was, you know, really sweet. But we learned, like, the name that they call him, what was it, Daishin, is a name that comes from the kingdom he's originally from. Essentially, he was a future king, but his kingdom, his homeland, got overrun by the blight, basically ripped through his kingdom. And actually the guy that's like a father to him actually was one of his armament to, like, was an armament to his father. And so when everything happened, he led Lan out and brought him here. So that's why this place has been his home. Like, he's basically king to a kingdom that no longer exists, which is heartbreaking to know. But it's this complicated thing of like, yeah, him and Nynaeve like hook up, but because it was already there, but they kind of walked away because it was like, oh, good night. But then she followed him into his room. But for her, it's that complicated thing of like, right, as a wisdom, they're not supposed to wed, but it's also like, right, because she's like, now I wondered why you like locked up with like someone like Moraine, because it's like, I think there's other Aes Sedai that she'd probably be more okay with, like, the fact it's Lan. But it's like, Moraine is who she is. She is very secretive. She is the person that will tell half-truths. At least tells the truth that she believes to be true. But still, it's like, she can mislead. We know she can. But it's in her mind, it's like, you're hers. Because because she's like, now I understand why now knowing your history, you're a boy that had no family, and with her, you found a family again. You found a purpose, found somewhere to belong. So that's why Moraine is so important to you. But it's like, right, I'm not hers. And Nynaeve is like, aren't you? Because I don't know whether she thinks like, oh, because an Aes Sedai in the water, like you guys have that relationship. But I think it's also because like Lan doesn't want to go like, she's actually in a relationship with someone already. And it's like, that's Moraine's business. But it's also going to be the thing of, once again, despite everything, the relationship between a Aes Sedai in their water, like there's nothing else like it, So that's always going to be a complicated thing if they're, with their relationship, their backgrounds, their situations. Other than that, we had the Egwene and Rand situation. And I thought because he's an Aiel, the moment he's shooting those arrows, I thought he was either going to break his bow or he's going to shoot the arrows so hard it was going to... Because, like, the Aiels, like, are supposed to be, like, super strong and stuff. I mean, at the very least, they're really good warriors. So that's what I was wondering about. But obviously, him and Egwene talk. He's like, yeah, sorry about the whole parent thing. There being something between you guys. I know there is. She's like, no, it's not about that. That's not why I'm mad at you. It's that you think I don't care about Matt, that I wouldn't die for him. And he's like, sorry. It's just like, I said all that because I was scared. I don't want to lose you. He'd even said it earlier, like he couldn't think of losing anyone else after all that they lost back in the Twin Rivers. It's like, there's been so much death already. It's like, I don't want to I can't imagine losing any of you guys. And so Egwene was promising, like, right, that they won't. Because if it ends up being, like, because she's like, at the end of the day, we're all going to come back after this. And Rand is like, if you do, then I want you to go to the tower and be who you want to be. And she's like, I'm not going to there without you. And he's like, of course not. An Aes Sedai can't go without her warder. And it's like, you think I'd let that responsibility fall to anyone else? But then she's also like, if you end up being the one. I forgot what she actually wanted him to do. Like, if he was the one that actually came back. But then they do their thing. But the problem is, like, Rand wakes up and he's thinking about what the wind said. It's like, the Black Wind is like, right, you've known all along. You've just been denying it to yourself. You are the Dragon Reborn. And he thinks back to when he was escaping from Dana and he broke the door down. He channeled then. Inside the ways, it wasn't Egwene that channeled, he did. So the fact is that he's channeled before and hasn't gone mad like Matt is because the power is meant to be his. So because at first I was like, could it be that IELs can channel? Because I know, like I said, I was under the impression like they had superhuman strength, but maybe that was maybe that was my misunderstanding. Maybe it's just like they're really good warriors. But I could have sworn like, what was it? Thomas was saying that like, or maybe it was just Tom. I can't remember now. The guy that held off the Fade because we don't know if he's still alive or not. Which it could always be that, because I'm like, there's something up with that guy. There's no way he's just gone. Like, not unless he's in this, not unless like him and the peddler are the same person. He just, bounces between the skies. Because once again, maybe he actually is the Dark One and he's just like futzing around as like different people in disguise playing different roles because he enjoys this like a game. Want to be in on the action and just be in the front row seats for everything to go down. Maybe not. Maybe he just has ulterior motives of his own. Whatever the case may be. Like I said, I was under the impression. So I thought like all he was doing was like because he might have been an IL. IL. I keep saying like IEL, but it's like IL. But it's like that on top of being a channeler and being the dragon. And he ends up going to the seer and he's like, tell me I'm not the dragon. Because she's like, right, you're not going to be too happy about what I've seen. And so she actually saw his birth years ago and knew exactly what was going to happen to him. Because saying like, right, your birth was unnatural, And even then he was like, what do you see? Like, for me, like, do I... And she's like, oh, like rainbows and this and that. And he's like, do I come back from this? And she's like... doesn't really answer. He's like, I didn't think so. So he's going, in that moment, he solidified it in his head of like, I'm not going to drag the others into this. I am the dragon. I'm not going to let them die. I'm going to protect my friends. If anyone has to die and if I'm not going to make it, then let it only be on me. So I guess because now that he's actually accepted being the dragon, maybe that changed it because she saw Rand with a baby, but maybe it's supposed to be like, right, what the baby represents. Like maybe him and Egwene like maybe like she ends up pregnant after their night together, and so maybe that's what that's supposed to be. Or maybe it's that this whole thing against the Dark One isn't going to go the way anyone thinks it will. We'll have to see. But Rand, now knowing this, goes to Moraine and ends up telling her, I'm the dragon, and they go off on their own. Obviously, Nynaeve and Egwene make up. Even Perrin, came to make up as well, like, despite everything. Because I love that Egwene was like, oh, it's interesting that you're here. Your bed was so perfectly neat, so it's almost like you slept somewhere else. She was like, no, I couldn't sleep, so I was just out and about. But at the end of the day, they all made the decision that they were going to go. But then it's like, right, where's Rand? And it's like, he'd already left. And even Lan was like, right, Moraine's hidden our bond. She's masked it, so I don't know where she is. And we see them standing before the Blight. Which, when we're seeing the Blight, it reminds me, if you ever played the, what was it? The 2008 reboot of Prince of Persia. It's the one with that, like, interesting art style and shell shading. It's a pretty dope Prince of Persia that we never got a sequel to. I'm still bummed about that. It was really good, but I guess it just never did well. The only thing that ever came out about it was a DLC, and that was it. So there was still plenty more. But it reminded me of the corruption in that game. It's kind of what the Blight kind of reminded me of. So going through the Blight is the only way to get to the eye of where the Dark One is. So that's where things are left at the end. It'll definitely be interesting to see where the next episode takes us with all this. I do believe the next episode is the season finale, so how this all potentially wraps up, if it is in fact the season finale, it's definitely going to be interesting. At the very least, they probably haven't, like, Lan won't have an idea what to do, but it's like, right, all of them will be like, right, he figured out he's the dragon and he's going off on his own, so none of us get, but it's like, none of them are going to let him just walk to his death like that, so, and I think that's going to be the changing and deciding factor in all of this, so. It's also going to be interesting to get some insight into what Matt's up to. I'm curious, are we going to cut to him at all next episode? We'll have to wait and see how this all plays out. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.